Hello, my name is Bob Margulies. I'm a former president of the Hudson County Bar Association. It's my pleasure today to interview Gerald Miller, a lawyer admitted in 1965, just a couple of weeks ago. So Jerry, you have long roots in Hudson County. You grew up in West New York,
Born in Weehawken, grew up in West New York.
and you went to what, Memorial?
Graduated from Memorial High School in West New York.
Then where did you go to college and law school?
University of Pennsylvania, undergraduate degree, and Harvard Law School.
And many people that go to Harvard wouldn't come back necessarily to Hudson County at the time. What motivated you to do that?
I think Hudson County is an exciting place to practice. Obviously, I lived in Hudson County, I have roots here, and it's a good place to practice. And it was then, and it still is.
Now, when you came back, did you join a firm?
I initially practiced with the firm of Stryker, Thames and Dill, which did primarily corporate work in Newark. But I stayed there for less than a year and decided that's not what I wanted to do.
And so what was your first real job here in Hudson County?
Worked for the predecessor firm that I'm at now for all these years. It was then the law firm of Abraham Miller. About 2 years later, a partnership was formed between Abraham Miller, Michael Hockman, Leonard Myerson, and myself. And the firm then was Miller, Hockman, Myerson, and Miller.
And Mr. Myerson's still practicing with you,
Yes,
isn't
he
he?
is.
So tell us a little bit about Abe Miller. I understand he was a little before my time, but he had quite a reputation.
His reputation was primarily in the area of criminal law. The firm did both criminal and civil. Abe did primarily the criminal work. At that point when I joined it, he was very much involved in municipal court, juvenile, but even at that point he did try a murder case late in his career.
So the firm, what's the firm name today?
It's Miller, Myerson, and Corbo.
And unfortunately, Ms. Corbo, a few years ago, prematurely left us.
A little more than 2 years ago. She'd been a partner for more than 30 years.
Yeah. So over the years, I'm assuming that you've seen a bit of a change in the way law has been practiced. What do you think?
Some changes and some remain the same.
Well, tell us what your observations are about when you first started practicing, what it was like that might be a little different than today.
I think the primary difference in the criminal practice is that there was no public defender when I began to practice. And therefore, the courts assigned counsel pro bono to represent defendants. And also there were many more cases that private practitioners had since there were no public defenders. So that's a major change. I think by and large people receive better representation with the public defender than having pro bono attorneys who had no experience with criminal law.
Now, your practice of law has spread across the whole breadth of different areas, I assume.
Yes, it has.
And so you've tried jury cases, right?
Of all kinds, criminal and civil.
What's your observation on judges from when you were much younger and today? Is it any different?
It's very difficult to compare, because when you start out practicing you don't know that much, so you tend to look up to judges. As time goes on and you've practiced, you have a different perspective. I would say that I'm not not sure that there's any great difference in the quality of judges now as opposed to then, because then as now, politics plays a large part in who's appointed to the judiciary now and then, and it's not always on the basis of ability. So I think we had good judges then and poor judges then, and mediocre judges, and probably the same holds true now. You have a wide variety and ability of judges.
Now, how many years have you been practicing? I didn't do my math here.
54, 53.
Okay. What changes have you seen in Hudson County, having been born in Hudson County and now lived through quite a transformation, particularly here in Jersey City, well, in all the communities, I think. How has that affected the way you practice law, or what you've observed about the communities?
Hudson County has always been an immigrant community. The nature of the immigrants have changed. They're from different countries, and we've gone through a number of various waves since I've been living here and practicing. You had the very major change with the migration from Cuba was a very significant change, and the people who came from Cuba tended to be from a higher socioeconomic group than the population that was here before. So it was probably an uplifting in a socioeconomic sense from that immigration. And you've now had a much greater immigration from both the Far East and the Mid East. That's changed made it even more diverse than it was, but it's still an upward stride in place for the immigrants. They all add a certain amount of energy to it because they're seeking to, they came here to do better, and that's what they're seeking to do.
I note that
One more change is, in recent years, is the big change on the waterfronts, both in Jersey City and in the North Hudson communities, and the building of large apartment buildings that have appealed to people from New York, and that's been again an enhancement in the socioeconomic status of people who are living in Hudson County. It's less blue collar than it used to be. Obviously it's still blue collar, but that's been uplifted by and I only say uplifted in a socioeconomic status, nothing in a judgmental status that the people who are coming in are better than the people who were here before, but they are wealthier and they have better jobs.
Tip O'Neill, I think, said all politics are local, and Hudson County has quite a history of politics. What influence have you seen on the politics from when you started in the mid-60s up to today? And how has that affected your participation as a lawyer in the legal community?
I think when I first began to practice, I think politicians were more blatant in their seeking to influence the courts and judicial personnel. When you go back to the Kenny years and some of the years thereafter, I think there was probably more willingness to call up a judge and say, I know such and such person, can you do a favor for? I think there's much less of that now.
Did you have the opportunity to participate in any of the political trials over the years? Were any of them particularly interesting or significant?
I have not. I really stayed apolitical. I mean, we've represented some political figures who have been charged with crimes, but the firm basically has not been involved in politics and taken sides. By and large, we're representing governmental agencies.
Are there any, whether there are trials or transactions that you've represented people in over the years that were either particularly interesting to you or to the public in any way? What do you think?
Well, I tried a murder case recently that had a great deal of intellectual interest to me because I had to learn a lot of DNA. The state's case rested on DNA evidence and medical evidence, so it was very challenging to learn the DNA and be able to effectively cross-examine the state's DNA witness, and also to be involved with the complex medical issues as to what may have been the cause of death. So that was an interesting case. And over the years, it's hard to talk about. One political case that I was involved in my early career involved the Hudson County pension, and it involved the issue of the fact that in addition to what people got for their pensions, they had to contribute a certain percentage to the political machine to keep their jobs, and that was an issue in the case. Other cases,
What happened there?
it was a class action, and we were successful to get the payments to the pensioners. And this goes back many, many years. Harold Ruvo, another attorney who still practices but not in Hudson County anymore, was involved in the case.
It was Nolan versus Ruvo?
Nolan versus Ruvo, yes.
Which was the precursor to the case on the nurses in the hospital.
Yeah.
Where there was a contention that we were involved in that case.
So, and there were other cases over the years. Again, many of the political cases were early, and we don't have them anymore, where involving, again, people who dealt with the county had to make contributions in order to get the business with the county. And there were federal suits seeking to recover the funds that had been paid by the various people to get the business. We don't see too many of those cases anymore. That's for the better.
Is it your perception that during your career, the last 53 or 4 years, that the courts, at least in New Jersey, have remained reasonably pristine in terms of corruption? What do you think? We have a reasonably honest judiciary?
I think so. As far as we know, I can't think of very many cases where judges have been accused of corruption. I think there was one judge in Union County, but I don't recall any in Hudson where judges were involved in any of the political trials or were forced to resign their bench because of political corruption.
Is it harder to practice law today than when you started in terms of the discovery demands and electronic discovery? And in other words, have the computers helped or not in practice of law in your judgment?
Well, let me start. The one thing that I don't think has changed is trying cases. I think you try cases now very similar to the way you tried cases when I first began to practice. That really hasn't changed, the trial. I mean, it's changed in the sense that you had changes in the composition of the jury, and therefore your arguments may be different because you're appealing to a different type of juror. But that's just a nuance. I think there's less change in the criminal law over the last 25, 30 years. Probably the biggest change was a Supreme Court case called Brady, which required the state to provide discovery that they did not. I think it depends on the nature of the case. Obviously, because of the use of computers and electronics, maybe society has become more complicated, and therefore discovery has become more complicated. In some ways it's more difficult, but with the use of the computer, in some ways it's easier. So there are various balancing in it. I'm not sure that practicing law now is any more difficult than it was when I first began to practice.
Now, have you had the opportunity to try cases in other jurisdictions, other parts of the state?
I have. I primarily tried cases in Hudson County, but I've tried cases in Bergen County, I've tried cases in Essex County, I've tried cases in Union and Monmouth.
And other than the local flavor of those vicinages, any particular difference, or is New Jersey, do you pretty much, you feel comfortable at any of those courts?
I think you always feel more comfortable in your home court just because you're more familiar. Again, I don't know if there's any major differences. Again, you have different populations in different counties. So some counties are more conservative than others. So Hudson County in the past has always been a very liberal county, more forgiving of people than other counties. So if you're doing criminal work, it's good to practice in Hudson with that flavor. People know the hard times that they've had, so they tend to sympathize with whether it's a plaintiff in a civil case or a defendant in a criminal case that they might not otherwise in some other counties.
Now, I've been told that some people perceive that when you started out and for the next period of time after that, there were giants in the law. Did you ever have that sense that there were those individuals that really shone above the great mass of lawyers? And if so, who might that be?
But isn't it true at all times? In other words, we have people now who might be perceived by younger lawyers as the giants of the law. And it clearly were people, when I began to practice, whether it was my uncle or Ray Brown, I looked up to them, and it was a great learning experience to try a criminal case with Ray Brown, after practicing just a few years, and to be co-defendants with him. So that was a great learning experience.
Well, tell us a little bit about Ray
There were
Brown.
also,
Maybe everybody doesn't know who he was.
Ray Brown was someone from Jersey City. He had a major criminal practice in a lot of cases. He was very active in the NAACP and causes, and he and his then partner, Irv Vogelman, were involved in a lot of civil rights, and race very much stood up for the rights of black people, and he projected that throughout his career.
He certainly was one of the giants. Now, you also have had, you've dabbled in, it's not dabbling, but matrimonial law, chancery and probate.
I've
We're
also
one of the-
do a lot of appellate work, and I've been involved in, that's always been interesting.
Are there any particular appeals that you recall that you think either made a point or made a difference?
One appeal stands out in my mind that I lost. I was arguing to change the parent-child immunity. At that time, a child could not sue his parent in negligence. And I argued the case, and there was a temporary justice sitting because one judge was out. And I always remember I was making an argument, and Chief Justice Weintraub said to me, "You have 3 judges on your side now. If you continue to make that argument, you may lose one." Well, as it turned out, they decided not to decide the case on a basis of a temporary justice. He would have decided in my favor and changed it. I re-argued it, and that judge who was out came back, and I lost 4-3. The following year, Justice Proctor said I was wrong, and in the next case that came up, they decided 4-3 in favor of the parent-child immunity. So that case always stands out in my mind as being ahead of my time.
Well, the background here are a number of green books, and it always seems to me that it's sort of interesting when you walk into an office and see the books and think that once you have a trial, it's over. It's often never over because the next level of court will either say you did it right or you did it wrong, and then you can still go to the next level. And every once in a while, have you ever had the opportunity to file a petition in the U.S. Supreme Court?
Yes. The best I've done there is I've had 2 justices vote to grant my petition, but I never had it so that they all granted it. And that was a case out of Hudson County too.
In your appellate practice, do you see any difference in the appellate judges today as opposed to yesteryear? Are they pretty much, other than their individual characteristics, pretty much the same in terms of the way they approach the law?
And you have a great deal of difference, I think some of them, again, it may be a perspective of where I was then and where I am now. But I thought that back then some of the judges could be very critical of lawyers, more so, and very sharp on a bench. But then, as I said, the Chief Justice went out of his way to and I had a very good experience with Chief Justice Hughes. I came down on a matter to argue on a bail situation. He was very kind to me, and in chambers and all. Again, I was a relatively young attorney. I thought he went out of his way.
He was an unusual man,
Yes.
having been the governor and the Chief Justice, and he was my observation, he was a politician in the finest sense
Yes.
of the word, so he would have treated you well. If you've been practicing for over 50 years, you must like doing this.
Oh, I do. I'm only practicing now because I like it. I don't have to practice. I enjoy it. I've enjoyed practicing law all this time, and I continue to enjoy it, and that's why I continue to practice.
Is there anything about Hudson County lawyers and the professionalism and interaction that you think is special here?
Well, there's a good camaraderie. You know, again, this has been my base, but and I would say that there's even more camaraderie now than there was. When I first began to practice, a number of the older attorneys had grown up during the Depression, and there was a great deal of more competition and fighting for the dollar, and they tended to be much more competitive with each other. I think there's less of that now, even though obviously people still are competing economically. I think there's more camaraderie than even there used to be. And there always was. It's a relative concept.
Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us and talking about your career. And I want to say, in terms of the people I see, you are one of the giants today. So I know you're very humble. You're very humble about it, but I think you deserve that status. So thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you.